When you watch an educational video, you are usually looking at the end product of a massive academic ecosystem. Creators take papers that have been rigorously debated by researchers and translate them into a script. Because that underlying data comes from university professors and subject matter experts, it is incredibly easy to assume everything you hear is an absolute, undeniable fact. This entire ecosystem relies on peer review. Before a scholarly article ever reaches the public, the author's colleagues check the math, verify the sources, and scrutinize the arguments to make sure they are actually well-founded. But a 60-page academic journal isn't exactly light reading. To make that data engaging for hundreds of thousands of viewers, scriptwriters have to add a bit of narrative flair. And when you strip away the dense academic jargon to make the topic entertaining, vital nuances are often lost in translation. Relying on unvetted data is a compounding risk. Much like the early astronomers who tried to map the heavens while believing the Earth was the center of the universe, building a worldview on incorrect information guarantees a destination that doesn't exist. People use these videos to shape how they understand the world. To keep that intellectual foundation solid, true accountability requires creators to be as critical of their own work as the academics they study, conducting a public audit of where things went wrong. So today, we are going to look back at our own track record and review the errors we made on this channel over the past year. We can break these down into 3 distinct categories of severity. We will start with the silly, obvious oversights, move into the nuances lost in translation, and finally confront the deep, systemic biases that can infect the research process itself. Correcting a label on a map is a start, but we need to understand the mechanism behind the error to see exactly where the editorial process failed and allowed misinformation to reach our audience. Let's start with level 1. These blunders don't come from a biased source or a misinterpretation of complex data. They happen simply because someone on the team was being a dunce. Take our exploration of the Canadian economy. Canada is a massive, incredible country, but it definitely does not own Alaska. The United States purchased that territory from Russia in 1867. We made a remarkably similar map error in another video, accidentally implying that the Netherlands had recently invaded a slice of northern France. Then there's the time we were discussing extreme wealth inequality and held up the nation of Johannesburg as an example. Johannesburg is, of course, a city located inside the nation of South Africa. And finally, during our dive into the virtual economy of EVE Online, we tried to calculate household consumption. We added 32 trillion to 48.6 trillion and somehow arrived at 90.6. As anyone who has passed 3rd grade math knows, that actually equals 80.6 trillion, an oversight that threw off our final GDP calculation by nearly 40 trillion credits. None of these oversights are going to ruin anyone's life. They are completely benign errors. But leaving basic addition and geography uncorrected establishes a foundation of intellectual sloppiness. That brings us to level 2. These mistakes occur when you try to compress a highly complex financial system into a neat, entertaining sentence, stripping away the exact details that make the system work. A perfect example is our coverage of Australia's retirement fund system, known as superannuation. I stated that contributions to this fund are taken entirely before taxes, framing it as an incredibly tax-efficient way to save. While the money is indeed pulled from your paycheck before standard income tax is applied, those contributions are immediately hit with a flat 15% rate. My original description wasn't a total fabrication, but it ignored a massive tax bracket and created a highly misleading picture. We ran into the exact same problem discussing Monaco. We pointed to their 19.6% value-added tax and claimed it was one of the highest in the world. 19.6% is a hefty tax, but place it next to other European countries, and Monaco is actually sitting near the bottom of the regional pack. This is where things get risky. A viewer could realistically look at a technically true but highly misleading summary of a tax policy and use it to change how they vote or how they invest their own money. But there is a final, far more severe category. Level 3 errors happen when the research process itself is compromised by systemic bias. Even if an academic paper passes rigorous peer review, that review means very little if every single person on the panel shares the exact same worldview. I have to admit my own blind spots here. I was educated at universities that heavily favored Keynesian economics. The curriculum treated nearly every other school of economic thought as a minor triviality. Because of that background, I wrote 2 videos analyzing trickle-down economics using sources drawn exclusively from critics of the theory. By failing to include academics from the opposing side, the final product offered a completely skewed representation of the actual debate. That same lack of diverse reading damaged our analysis of Bernie Sanders' economic policies. By focusing solely on a narrow selection of background material, we misrepresented his platform and failed to provide a fair assessment of his actual policies. This is the most dangerous trap in educational content. It allows a creator to present an entirely one-sided argument while using the shield of academic authority to deflect criticism. You cannot fix a heavily biased foundation with a pinned comment. Because those videos on trickle-down economics and Bernie Sanders fail to meet our standards for balanced research, they are being deleted from the channel entirely. Ultimately, no source material is flawless. Whether it is the friction of turning data into entertainment, simple human carelessness, or deeply ingrained ideological blind spots, bad information always finds a way to slip through. That is why the final layer of peer review has to be you. Hundreds of thousands of viewers bring a collective array of skills, lived experiences, and specialized knowledge that will always outmatch a single writer or production team. If we want to genuinely understand how the global economy works, we have to practice radical transparency. Thank you to everyone, from the casual viewers to the toughest critics, for calling out our mistakes, holding this channel to a higher standard, and ensuring that the information we share is actually worth learning.